What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you win close range fights in Fortnite Chapter 6. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below what your favorite shotgun is so far in Chapter 6. Mine has to be the Sentinel Pump shotgun. So this video and the tips in this video, I think, will help you with the most important fights in Fortnite. Like, Fortnite is a game that is typically kind of revolved around close range fights, because of the way just the game plays out and the fact that there's so much mobility in the game. A lot of times if you're just fighting somebody medium range, they have so many opportunities to reset the fight. So if you're fighting somebody decent, it's probably going to come down to close range. The first and one of the most important pieces of advice I have is just to find settings that work best for you. With shotguns in Fortnite, you mostly want to be hip firing them. This is shooting without aiming in. And one of the main reasons for this is because when you aim in, your sensitivity is slowed down, right? And this makes it harder for you to adjust to any potential movement the enemy is going to be doing, which is often going to be a thing in close range. But also this limits your movement a lot, and that is going to make it easier for you to get hit by the enemy. So there's times where you can aim down your sight with your shotgun and where it's ideal to aim down sight with your shotgun. But most of that, it's going to be when you're playing off cover or peeking from behind cover. If you're just, in a close range fight, you want to be hip firing your shotgun and you want to be comfortable hip firing your shotgun. So I think it's very, very important that you find a sensitivity that feels comfortable to hip fire with. And this hip firing is faster typically, and a lot of people will play on a sensitivity that's way too fast for them. And then that's why they feel like they have to aim in those close range fights because they can't control it otherwise. But being forced to aim in with your shotgun is negative in other aspects and detracts from other aspects of your game. So I think it's very important that you find a sensitivity that you feel comfortable hip firing with, just your base X and Y. And then also, as far as your movement buttons like jumping and crouching, ideally you would want to be able to do both of these actions without taking your thumbs off the analog stick if you're a controller player, or even if you're a keyboard. Just have them on binds that feel comfortable to you. Because if you're a controller player, for example, and if you have to take your thumb off the right stick to jump, then you're not going to be able to jump and aim at the same time. And in close range fights, you guys know people are jumping around with shotguns. And then same with like crouching or sliding. Like, these are things that you can do to throw your opponent's aim off. And so having binds that are comfortable for you and that you can aim while doing those actions, I think is pretty important. Movement in general is just going to be very important in these close range fights. Anything that you can do to throw off your opponent's aim, whether that's jumping around, whether that's like jumping and landing in a slide, whether it's just like crouching up and down, you want to be annoying to fight and evasive to fight. And when you fight somebody that's good at the game, you'll notice that they're not just standing there, right? Like, what would you want an enemy to do? If you could mind control them and make the fight as easy as possible, they would just stand there and let you shoot them, right? When you fight someone that's a hard fight, they're often all over the place. They're unpredictable. They're moving around. You want to be like that. And when you fight somebody that's difficult to fight, think about why they were difficult to fight and what made them difficult to fight, and see if you can try to emulate that into your own game. Those are two of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people make in close range fights, just like beginners, that they aim in with their shotgun too much, and then they're just kind of standing still when fighting because they're not comfortable moving and aiming, which is why I said it's mostly beginner problems. Like, once you play the game more, you'll get used to it. And once you're kind of aware that you're making that mistake, you'll often get better at it as well. So you just want to avoid those two things. And then also, just using cover is very important. As I said, you want to be inconvenient to fight and inconvenient to hit. And so a lot of close range fights, you and the opponent will be, just on each other basically, and there won't be cover. But if there is like a rock, a tree, maybe a house that you can get to, something that you can use as cover to make it harder for your opponent to hit you than it is for you to hit them, is huge. And when you are using cover in Fortnite, one of the main things you want to take advantage of is going to be right shoulder peek, because the way the cameras work in Fortnite, it's a third-person game. If you peek from the right, you have to expose less of your character than if you're peeking from the left, because the crosshair is like slightly off center. And so if you are playing off of cover, you want to be peeking from the right and have your opponent pushing into you while you have a right shoulder peek. There's times where you'll have to peek from the left. Nothing is ideal, but if you have the choice and you can, choose how you play the fight, right shoulder peek is ideal. And repositioning to situations where you have a right shoulder peek is one of those things that's like a clear indicator that somebody kind of knows what they're doing in Fortnite, because that's taking advantage of so many different like aspects of the game. If a fight is happening and you shockwave away to a spot where you have right shoulder peek so that the person like chases into you and you have like an advantage in that fight, I think that's very big and usually indicative of the fact that somebody is pretty good at the game. A lot of what this comes down to and a lot of what I just talked about is going to be mechanical skill, like aiming, movement, using cover properly. A lot of this just comes down to being comfortable playing the game and comfortable hitting your buttons, and, good at aiming, I think, is just a mechanical skill. And so one of the best ways that you can improve your skills and improve these aspects of your game is just to get in fights more often and get into close range fights more often, because these are just mechanical skills. Everybody is not good at it at first. It takes time to build that mechanical skill and build that comfort in those situations. I also just think that being decisive is incredibly important. And a lot of these fights and a lot of close range fights, they require you to make decisions very quickly without thinking about it too much. If you're having to think about jump shotting and think about strafing, it's going to be harder for you to play the fight than the opponent who's just used to playing and can do this as kind of second nature, So getting in fights more often, I think, is going to build these mechanical skills, and it's going to build your, micro decision-making skills in these fights. And then it's also going to help you just get comfortable fighting. A lot of players, when they start playing the game, they're really scared fighting and they're nervous and, they're very concerned about getting the win. I think this is very normal. But the more fights you get in and the more you just kind of lose and improve over time, I feel like you kind of get over this nervousness and you get over this panic, and that is ideal. If you're panicking in every fight, it's going to be harder for you to play the fight out than somebody who's calm and is used to fighting. And I think one massive problem that a lot of players have is they start playing the game, they play pretty passive, they get a few wins here and there, and then over time, Fortnite starts putting them in harder lobbies because they're more experienced players than they were when they started out, but they never actually built the fighting skills to be able to play in those like slightly harder lobbies. And then they kind of hit, a block where they just feel like they're instantly dead in every fight. And I think just being okay losing, getting in fights, and kind of trying to improve over time is very important. If you just keep avoiding fights and hoping you get lucky and win in the end, it can happen. But a lot of times it's just going to kind of be up to your opponent in the situation if it works out for you, not something that you're not going to go and take that win for yourself. Another mechanical skill that you're going to want to build in Fortnite is going to be weapon swapping in close range, and this is very important whenever a pump shotgun is meta. Personally, I think the Sentinel pump is the best shotgun in Chapter 6, and so this is a skill that's going to be important. And what this means is you shoot the shotgun and then you swap to a spray weapon to fill the time between shots, because the Sentinel pump shotgun is a pump shotgun, right? You shoot it and then there's a delay between the next shot. But the way Fortnite works, you don't have to actually do that pump animation. It's just that a certain amount of time has to pass between shots. So it's better for you to pump, swap to a spray weapon, and then swap back to your pump when it's ready to shoot again, rather than just sitting on the pump the entire time and waiting for it to shoot. If you're using something like an auto shotgun, you don't really need to swap. You can just stay on it. The Oni shotgun is kind of weird because it's not a pump, but it also doesn't have a fast fire rate. But just in terms of the pump, or any pump style shotgun in Fortnite, you're going to want to shoot, swap to your spray weapon to fill that time between shots, and then swap back to the pump. And understanding this timing and getting that, skill of weapon swapping down, I think is very important for just maximizing your damage output in these close range fights. If you have two players fighting, one is shooting a pump and swapping to a spray weapon and then back to the pump, and one is just staying on their pump the entire time waiting for it to shoot, the one who's swapping is going to get more damage in that time for sure, right? Because they're doing something with that time between shots. And not only does this take skill in terms of aiming and swapping weapons, but also knowing this timing, I think just comes from experience and using the guns and getting used to it. Sometimes you'll swap too early and your pump isn't ready to shoot. Sometimes you'll maybe swap too late and that could have costed you. But the main problem is typically swapping back too early and then not being able to shoot yet and kind of messing up your timing. But either way, it's just one of those things that you need to build and get used to over time. I think a lot of players, when they first learn about this, are surprised because they thought that they had to do that pump animation to shoot again, but that's not how pump shotguns work in Fortnite. Filling that, time between shots with damage is pretty good. Another thing that I think is just important to get down and get used to is going to be the range on the shotguns. A lot of the shotguns have different ranges, and whichever one you're using, you need to know that like second nature and get used to playing off that. Because if you're shooting at a range that your shotgun isn't quite, useful yet, and you're hitting for like 6 damage, that's not really that helpful. Where it's like maybe if you waited a second or two, got a bit closer, that would have benefited you a lot. So knowing that range, like second nature, it's something that you also will develop and build over time. And if that is something that you've never felt comfortable with, maybe try to kind of focus on that a bit more and learn the ranges of the shotguns. You can learn it in the sense that you mark things and know that, like, okay, this shotgun has 6.5 meters range. That's something I've never cared about too much, though, because in the fight, you're not thinking like that. You know, you need to know it like second nature in the fight. And I think the only way you get that just by getting in fights over time and building that knowledge. And that's another reason why I think you want to get in a lot of fights. Another big aspect, if I could recommend, you know, 2 tips in this video, it'd be find settings that work for you, and it'd be get early damage. One of the most important things you can do to end up winning more close range fights in Fortnite is going to be to start that fight with an advantage. You don't want to just be, you know, 250 health jumping on somebody who's also 250 health, because that fight is going to go longer. The shotguns do a lot of damage at times, and it can be very swingy. Maybe yours hits for 50 and his hits for 150. You're probably going to lose that fight. There will be times where you have to jump on people with no damage, right? It's going to happen. Fortnite is a battle royale. It's not like a perfect game. Like, there's a lot of random situations you'll get in, but your goal or ideal circumstance shouldn't just be, I'm full health, you're full health, let me jump on you. Getting, you know, opening AR damage to start the fight. Maybe you beam somebody for like 100 damage and then jump on them. Not only do you have 100 HP advantage in this situation, but you also have a lot of pressure in that fight. The fight is going much better for you than it is the opponent. They're having to respond to the fact that somebody's pushing them and someone just did damage to them. And if they're one of those people that gets nervous and panics in fights, this is going to even be more advantageous for you because that pressure is going to be heavily in your favor. So this is just huge. I think opening damage, jump on them with something like the Void Mask or Shockwaves, finish that up with close range shotgun shots, swap to your spray, get the kill. Like that, just that bonus damage you have not only makes the fight easier for you in the sense that, you know, it's easier for you to eliminate them, but they're not going to have as much time to shoot back, hopefully. They're not going to be as relaxed as you, and that gives you a huge advantage in the fight, just the mental advantage you have, but also the HP advantage. Another reason why this is very, very, very important this season is because there's a melee weapon. And I feel like getting those opening AR tags is always a benefit in Fortnite and always just like a nice thing you want to be doing. But whenever there's a melee weapon in the game that's good, one of the biggest things you can do to get an advantage or to win those fights more often or lose to it less often is to just not be jumping on people dry. If you have, you know, 100 to 150 opening damage on somebody, and then they pull out the katana, they're probably going to get less hits off. You're only going to have to hit them a little bit more to finish that fight. Whereas if you're both full health and then they just start beating you with the katana and you can't move anymore and you can't aim anymore, it's going to be much harder for you to win that fight. So, you know, so getting those opening AR tags makes your fights easier always. But whenever there's a melee weapon in the game that's good, I think this is even more like drastically important. And I think this is a very big deal in Chapter 6 because the katana is very good, but also because the AR is very good and the mobility we have is very good. So you're going to have, you know, easy ways to push people, hopefully get on them and finish them. And the more damage you have to start the fight with, the less likely it is they get away as well, which is something you have to be concerned about. If you're only going to get one shotgun shot off before they void portal or shockwave away, that opening damage might be enough to, you know, allow you to get that kill, hopefully. I think cars are also just very important in close range fights in Fortnite. It's a piece of mobile cover for you that you can always use. You can bait people into getting in the car and then you can get out and shoot them. Hopefully help you avoid the katana. Just car fighting in general, I have other videos on it from past chapters, but most of this kind of translates to now. Having a car is very important in Chapter 6. It reduces your likelihood of just getting AR'd, but I feel like also it helps make some of those random fights where maybe you would just be hopping on somebody dry, makes them a little less random, I think. So using cars and getting used to car fighting, I think is really helpful. And then the final thing I want to talk about is going to be that repositioning after fights is often going to be a very good thing to do. If you have the best spot in zone and you're not getting pressured, then it's not like you need to shockwave away just because you fought somebody. But if you fought somebody, especially close range, other people nearby are going to know, okay, I just heard 2 people shooting shotguns. The winner of that fight is probably weak, right? So if you need to heal up, you know, maybe back up to another piece of cover or a bush and then heal up and then maybe go back for that loot. If you're just standing on the loot out in the open healing, you're making yourself an easy target. This is something that's just always important in a battle royale, but I think even more so in close range fights because a lot of Fortnite players, like I said, they hear 2 shotguns getting shot and they know the winner of that fight is going to be someone that's weak. They're going to try to third party it. Also with Chapter 6, crowns show on the map from any distance, so repositioning away from them. if you need to after a fight, I think is huge. And it's something that when I make those spectating videos, I notice a lot of people making this mistake where they're too transfixed on the loot. They're too worried about just, healing right away and not necessarily getting to safety, healing, and then maybe addressing the loot afterwards, or just not being concerned about the loot at all. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this to be helpful and informative, interesting. As always, if you did, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.